horrifying it is when a homeless woman, skin and bones, tightly embracing her trembling 6-year-old son in the freezing fog of San Francisco, is suddenly thrown back onto the street by the most powerful man in the city, the ruler of the entire underworld, just hours after he had knelt at her feet begging for forgiveness. Can you even imagine it? A headache that tormented him for 10 whole years, dozens of famous doctors completely helpless, yet with nothing more than her trembling hands, shaking from hunger and cold. The pain vanished like a miracle. And right after that, he turned ruthless, coldly ordering, "Get her and the kid out of my house right now." But that's not all. The real secret is far darker and more insane. She is the biological daughter of the dead wife he loved more than life itself. So the burning love he felt for her, from that very first glance on the street, what is it? Fate or the most horrifying taboo imaginable? Stay with me, because this story will leave you breathless until the very last moment. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. My name is Emily Harper, and by October of the year 2025, I had learned to measure life in small, desperate portions. One more night without heat, one more skipped meal, one more prayer whispered into the freezing San Francisco fog that it would all somehow hold together a little longer. I was 28 years old, but the mirror in the cracked gas station bathroom told a different story. My cheeks were hollow, my skin pale and stretched tight over bones that ached from too many cold nights curled on park benches or in the back seat of an old borrowed car. My dark hair hung limp and unwashed, and my eyes, once bright blue, my mother used to say, now carried the dull glaze of someone who had stopped hoping for tomorrow. I weighed barely over 100 pounds, malnourished from months of living on stale bread, canned soup heated over a camp stove when I could afford the propane, and whatever free coffee I could nurse at the 24-hour diner in the Tenderloin. Lucas, my 6-year-old son, was the only light left in my world. He was small for his age too, quiet and watchful, with the same blue eyes that sometimes looked at me like he was the one trying to hold us together. We had lost our tiny apartment in the Mission District 3 months earlier, when the landlord finally changed the locks after too many late rent payments. Since then, we had drifted. Shelters when there was space, the car when there wasn't, church basements that offered a warm floor for a night or two. I carried everything we owned in a worn backpack and a plastic grocery bag. A few changes of clothes, Lucas's favorite stuffed bear, my Bible with its frayed pages, and the last photograph of my late husband, taken before the cancer took him 2 years ago. The streets of San Francisco in October were unforgiving. The fog rolled in thick from the Pacific, damp and chilling, finding every tear in my thin coat. Nights dropped into the 40s, and I would wrap Lucas in every blanket we had, holding him close to share whatever warmth my body could give. Hunger was a constant companion, a gnawing ache that made my hands shake and my thoughts foggy. I had taken any odd job I could find, cleaning offices after hours, washing dishes at a greasy spoon, standing on corners holding signs for minimum wage. But it was never enough. The medical bills from my husband's illness still came like clockwork, and the collection calls rang on the cheap, prepaid phone I kept only for emergencies. That evening in mid-October, the sky over San Francisco hung low and gray, threatening rain that would turn to drizzle by morning. Lucas and I were walking along a dimly lit stretch near Potrero Hill, heading toward a church that sometimes let families stay in the basement. My legs felt like lead, my stomach empty since the half sandwich I'd shared with Lucas at noon. The distant glow of the downtown skyline mocked me. Those towering lights belonged to a world that felt galaxies away from the cracked sidewalks and abandoned lots around us. I didn't notice the black SUVs at first. They pulled up silently, blocking the narrow street. Men in dark coats stepped out, voices low and urgent. My heart slammed against my ribs. I pulled Lucas behind me, my voice trembling as I whispered, "Stay close, baby." Then I saw him, Vincent Moretti. Even in the poor light, he stood out, tall, broad-shouldered, fair-skinned, with sharp features that could have been carved from marble. His dark hair was neatly styled, his expensive wool overcoat tailored perfectly to his powerful frame. At 45, he carried the kind of authority that made the air around him feel heavier. Everyone in San Francisco knew the name, whispered it with fear or respect, depending on which side of the law you stood. He controlled construction empires on the surface, restaurants and real estate that glittered along the Embarcadero. But beneath that, he ruled the city's shadows, the man who decided which deals lived and which men disappeared. His eyes, stormy gray and piercing, locked onto something across the street. I followed his gaze and felt ice flood my veins. 3 men from a rival crew, word on the street called them the Sunset Kings, had cornered a young runner, one of Vincent's men by the look of the tattoo peeking from his collar. Knives glinted. Shouts echoed. It was a territory dispute, the kind that ended in blood if someone didn't step in. Vincent moved without hesitation. His voice cut through the night like a blade, calm, commanding, absolute. Back off, now. The rivals hesitated, recognizing him. One sneered, stepping forward with bravado. "This ain't your turf anymore, Moretti." Vincent's men fanned out, tense but waiting for his signal. No guns drawn. Yet. The standoff stretched, electric. My breath caught. Lucas whimpered against my leg. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted, fear and exhaustion pinning me in place. Then chaos. One rival lunged. Vincent's driver tackled him. Shouts turned to grunts as fists flew. It was controlled, brutal efficiency. No shots fired, but the threat hung heavy. Vincent himself stepped in, disarming another with a swift move that spoke of years handling such moments. His face remained stone, but I saw the flicker, the gnawing guilt in his eyes, the remorse that came from knowing every confrontation like this chipped away at whatever soul he had left after losing his wife Sophia 10 years ago in a bombing meant for him. The rivals backed down, retreating with curses and promises of payback. Vincent's crew stood victorious, breathing hard. The young runner nodded gratitude, and then his gaze found me. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, clutching Lucas, looking like exactly what I was, a destitute woman with nowhere to go, thin and shivering in the October chill. Our eyes met across the street, and something shifted in the air. Vincent's expression changed. The hard lines of his face softened, just a fraction. Guilt flashed deeper, guilt for the world he helped create, where women like me scraped by while he lived in penthouses overlooking the bay. Remorse for the violence his life bred, even when he tried to keep it contained. And beneath that, something new, overwhelming, surged through him like a tidal wave. Love. It hit him without warning, fierce and absolute, from the very first moment he truly saw me. Not pity, not duty. Love. Passionate, consuming, the kind that tore at a man's carefully built walls. He had buried his heart with Sophia, vowing never to feel again. But standing there, watching this fragile, resilient woman protect her child with nothing but her body and quiet courage, something inside him shattered open. I didn't know any of that then. All I felt was terror, confusion, a dizzying numbness as the world tilted. My knees weakened, the street spun. Why was this powerful man staring at me like I was the only thing that mattered in his dangerous universe? He crossed the street in long strides, his men parting for him. Up close, he was even more imposing, expensive cologne cutting through the city smells, his presence overwhelming. Yet his voice, when he spoke, was surprisingly gentle. "Are you all right?" I could barely nod. My throat closed. Lucas peeked out, wide-eyed. Vincent's gaze dropped to my son, then back to me, taking in the threadbare coat, the backpack, the exhaustion etched into every line of my face. Inner conflict raged across his features, remorse for the unfairness of it all, violent emotional turmoil at how deeply this stranger had already burrowed into his guarded heart. "You shouldn't be out here this late. It's not safe." His words were simple, but the weight behind them made my chest tighten. Suspicion warred with desperate curiosity. Who was he to care? Men like him didn't notice people like me. We're fine," I managed, my voice soft, timid, polite despite the fear. "Thank you, sir." He winced at the "sir," as if it reminded him of the chasm between us. Guilt gnawed harder. He glanced at his driver, a silent command passing between them. "Get in the car," he said quietly. Not an order, almost a plea. "Let me get you somewhere warm, food, a place for tonight." Shock rippled through me. Dizziness returned, the world blurring at the edges. This couldn't be real. Powerful men didn't rescue homeless women on dark streets. There had to be a price. But Lucas shivered harder against me, and the fog cut deeper. Exhaustion won. I nodded, numb, terrified, curiously drawn to the storm in his gray eyes. As we climbed into the warm leather interior of the SUV, heated seats, soft lighting, a world of luxury I'd only seen in magazines, Vincent sat across from us, silent but watching. His inner turmoil intensified with every mile. Love surged fiercer, clashing violently with remorse for his past, guilt for dragging an innocent like me into his shadowed life. And for me, the confusion deepened into something I couldn't name, a spark of hope amid the fear, a disorienting pull toward the man whose single glance had turned my broken world upside down. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, from desperate poverty to sudden, impossible protection. I didn't know yet that this was only the beginning. The SUV glided through the fog-shrouded streets of San Francisco like a silent ship cutting through gray water. I sat pressed against the door, Lucas asleep against my side, his small head heavy on my lap. The heated seats warmed my frozen bones for the first time in months, but the comfort felt wrong, dangerous, like a dream that would vanish and leave me colder than before. My heart pounded so hard I feared it would wake my son. Every few seconds, I stole a glance at the man across from us, Vincent Moretti. He had not spoken since we left Potrero Hill. He simply watched, gray eyes unreadable, jaw tight, one hand resting on his knee while the other gripped the armrest as if holding himself together. The city lights slid across his face in streaks of gold and shadow, highlighting the sharp angles, the faint scar along his cheekbone, the expensive watch that probably cost more than I had earned in the last 5 years combined. His wool overcoat lay open, revealing a tailored charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sewn onto his body. Everything about him screamed power, control, untouchable wealth. And yet, beneath the stillness, I sensed a storm. Inside Vincent, the storm was already raging. The moment he had seen me on that sidewalk, thin, trembling, shielding my child with nothing but my own frail body, something had cracked open inside him that he had sealed shut 10 years ago. Love had struck like lightning, fierce and instantaneous, burning away every vow he had made to remain cold and alone. It terrified him. It enraged him. How could a stranger, a homeless woman with hollow cheeks and frightened eyes, undo him in a single glance. Guilt clawed at his chest, guilt for the life he led, the violence that followed him, the blood on his hands that could never be washed away. Remorse flooded in waves, for Sophia, for the bombing that stole her, for every choice that had built his empire on fear. And now this woman, Emily, stirred a longing so violent it felt like punishment. He wanted to protect her, possess her, worship her, and the intensity of it made him want to roar. He forced himself to stay silent, afraid that if he spoke, the words would come out wrong, too raw, too desperate. Instead, he memorized her, the way exhaustion had etched faint lines around her blue eyes, the protective curve of her arm around her sleeping boy, the proud lift of her chin despite the humiliation of her circumstances. Every detail fed the fire inside him. The SUV turned onto a private road high in Pacific Heights, climbing past mansions hidden behind gates and manicured hedges. My breath caught as we approached an iron gate that swung open without a sound. Beyond it lay a house, no, a palace, of glass and stone overlooking the bay. Lights glowed softly from within, warm and golden against the fog. I had never seen anything like it outside of magazines. The car stopped under a covered portico. Vincent finally spoke, his voice low and careful. "You'll stay here tonight, both of you." I clutched Lucas tighter. "Sir, we can't impose." "It's not an imposition." His tone left no room for argument, yet his eyes held something gentler, pleading almost. Doors opened. 2 men in dark suits appeared. Bodyguards, I realized with a fresh wave of fear. But they kept their distance, respectful. Vincent stepped out first, then turned to offer his hand. I hesitated, suspicion and curiosity warring inside me. His palm was warm, strong, calloused in places that surprised me for a man who wore $1,000 suits. The touch sent a jolt through my numb fingers, and I pulled away quickly, cheeks burning. He led us inside. The foyer alone was larger than any apartment I had ever lived in. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. A grand staircase curved upward like something from a fairy tale. The air smelled faintly of cedar and lemon polish. Somewhere, a clock ticked softly. Everything was quiet, immaculate, impossibly beautiful, and it made my poverty feel sharper, more humiliating. My worn sneakers left faint marks on the shining floor. My coat, damp from fog, dripped onto marble worth more than my life. A woman in her late 60s appeared, elegant silver hair, kind but weary eyes. Vincent introduced her as Mrs. Rossi, the housekeeper. "Prepare the guest suite on the second floor," he instructed, "and the adjoining room for the boy. Warm bath, fresh clothes, food." Mrs. Rossi nodded without surprise, as if strange women and children appeared on the doorstep every night. She smiled gently at Lucas, still drowsy in my arms. "Come with me, dear. Let's get you both settled." I followed her up the staircase, legs shaking. Behind me, I felt Vincent's gaze like a physical weight, intense, protective, conflicted. The guest suite was breathtaking. High ceilings, a king bed piled with pillows, French doors opening onto a balcony with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge shrouded in mist. An adjoining room held a smaller bed, already made up, with fresh linens and a stuffed bear someone had thoughtfully placed on the pillow. Tears stung my eyes at the small kindness. Mrs. Rossi ran a bath, steam rising fragrant with lavender. She laid out soft towels, a woman's silk robe, pajamas in my size and Lucas's. "Mr. Moretti keeps spares for unexpected guests," she said quietly. I wondered what kind of unexpected guests, and fear twisted in my stomach again. While Lucas soaked happily, his first real bath in weeks, I stood under the shower until the hot water ran out, scrubbing away layers of grime and cold. My ribs showed starkly in the mirror. My collarbones jutted like wings. I looked like a ghost. Shame burned hot. How could I let my son live like this? When we came downstairs, a table had been set in a small dining room overlooking the garden. Platters waited: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans glistening with butter, warm bread, apple pie still steaming. Real food. My mouth watered painfully. Lucas's eyes went wide. Vincent stood by the window, phone to his ear, voice low and clipped. Another confrontation, I realized. Someone challenging a shipment down at the docks. His tone was ice, absolute authority. Tell them if they step foot in North Beach again, they won't walk out. He ended the call, slipped the phone into his pocket, and turned. For a moment, we stared at each other across the room. The air felt charged. His gaze traveled over my clean hair, the borrowed robe that hung loose on my thin frame, the way I hovered protectively near Lucas. Something fierce flashed in his eyes, possessive, tender, tormented. "Eat," he said softly. "Please." We did. I had to force myself not to devour everything at once. Lucas fell asleep at the table, cheek on his folded arms. Vincent lifted him gently, surprisingly gentle for such a powerful man, and carried him upstairs. I followed, heart pounding. He laid Lucas in the small bed, pulled the covers up, lingered a moment watching the boy sleep. The expression on his face nearly undid me. Raw longing, regret, love he didn't yet have the right to feel. Back in the hallway, he stopped outside my door. The space between us felt too small, too electric. "You're safe here," he said, voice rough. "No one will hurt you, not ever again." I wanted to believe him, desperately, but suspicion lingered. "Why are you doing this?" He looked away, jaw tight. Inner conflict tore at him visibly. Guilt for the danger his world posed. Remorse for how fiercely he already wanted to keep me. Fear that his love would destroy rather than save. "Because I can," he said finally. "And because you shouldn't have to suffer like that. Not you, not him." His gray eyes met mine, and the intensity in them stole my breath. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just us. His torment, my confusion, the impossible pull between a man who owned half the city and a woman who owned nothing. Then he stepped back, hands clenched at his sides as if fighting the urge to reach for me. "Good night, Emily." He turned and walked away down the shadowed hallway, shoulders rigid, every step a battle against the violent surge of love that threatened to consume him whole. I closed the door, leaned against it, and slid to the floor. Tears came silently, tears of exhaustion, fear, gratitude, and something new and terrifying I couldn't name. The softness of the carpet under my knees, the distant sound of waves against the cliffs below, the knowledge that for one night my son was warm and fed, it was too much. Too unfair that such luxury existed while I had nearly lost everything. Outside my window, fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. Somewhere in this vast house, Vincent Moretti wrestled demons I could only guess at. And I, Emily Harper, poor, broken, and suddenly sheltered beneath his roof, felt the first fragile threads of hope and danger beginning to weave around my heart. I didn't know yet how deeply they would bind us both. Morning light filtered through the heavy silk curtains of the guest suite, soft and golden, painting the room in colors I had almost forgotten existed. I woke slowly, disoriented, my body aching from the unfamiliar softness of the mattress beneath me. For a moment, I lay still, listening to the distant crash of waves against the cliffs below Pacific Heights and the quiet hum of a house that felt alive in ways my old life never had. Lucas stirred beside me, his small face peaceful in sleep, cheeks flushed from real warmth. I sat up carefully, dizziness washing over me as memories of the night before flooded back. The foggy street, the confrontation, Vincent Moretti's gray eyes locking onto mine like a lifeline thrown into dark water. My heart raced again, a mix of fear and something deeper, more confusing. How had we ended up here, in this palace of glass and marble, when only yesterday we had nowhere at all? I slipped from the bed, bare feet sinking into thick carpet that felt like clouds. The borrowed robe hung loose on my thin frame, a reminder of how small and fragile I was in this vast world of wealth. My reflection in the full-length mirror stopped me cold. Hollow cheeks, dark circles under my eyes from countless sleepless nights on cold benches, ribs visible beneath pale skin. Malnutrition had taken its toll. I looked like a shadow of the woman I once was. Shame burned hot in my chest. How could I face him looking like this? Downstairs, the scent of fresh coffee and warm pastries drew me like a magnet. Lucas padded behind me, holding my hand tightly. We found the breakfast room, a sunlit space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the fog-shrouded bay, the Golden Gate Bridge emerging like a dream through the mist. A table was set elegantly, silver trays of eggs, bacon, fresh fruit glistening with dew, croissants flaky and golden, pitchers of orange juice and milk. It was more food than Lucas and I had seen in weeks. My stomach twisted painfully with hunger and humiliation. Vincent was already there, standing by the window in a crisp white shirt and dark trousers. No tie, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He turned as we entered, and the air shifted, charged, heavy. His eyes drank me in, stormy gray deepening with that same overwhelming surge from the night before. Love, fierce and burning, tore through him anew, clashing violently with the remorse that gnawed at his soul. How could he feel this for a woman he barely knew? It felt like betrayal to Sophia's memory, yet undeniable, a fire that consumed his carefully built walls. Guilt flooded him, for the danger his life posed, for the unfairness that had brought her here, broken and desperate, while he stood untouched by hardship. "Good morning," he said softly, voice rough around the edges. I nodded, timid, my voice barely above a whisper. "Good morning, sir. Thank you for everything." He winced again at the "sir," inner conflict flashing across his face. "Vincent, please." Lucas tugged my hand, eyes wide at the spread. I helped him into a chair, my own legs unsteady. We ate in silence at first, the clink of silverware loud in the quiet room. Every bite tasted like heaven and sin. Guilt for accepting charity from a man whose world terrified me. Gratitude that made tears prick my eyes. Vincent watched us, not eating much himself. His gaze lingered on the way I carefully portioned food for Lucas first, on my thin wrists, the tremble in my hands from lingering weakness. The love intensified, passionate and possessive, warring with torment. He wanted to pull me into his arms, shield me from every cold night I had endured, but fear held him back. Fear of scaring her, of tainting her with his darkness. Days blurred into a strange rhythm. Vincent insisted we stay. "Until you're back on your feet," he said, though his eyes begged for longer. Mrs. Rossi brought clothes, simple jeans and sweaters for me, playful outfits for Lucas that fit perfectly. New shoes, warm coats. It felt absurdly unfair, gifts pouring in while I had nothing to give back. I observed him quietly, from afar at first. He worked from a home office overlooking the garden, phone calls sharp and commanding. One afternoon, I overheard him from the hallway. Another confrontation brewing in North Beach, rivals pushing boundaries again. His voice was steel. Handle it cleanly, no mistakes. He hung up, and I peeked through the cracked door. He stood at the window, shoulders tense, face tormented. Remorse etched deep lines around his eyes. The weight of his empire, the lives it touched, including mine now, pressed on him like a vice. Curiosity pulled me closer, guarded, fearful, yet drawn to the pain I recognized in him. One evening, as fog rolled thick over the bay, Vincent left suddenly, black SUV roaring down the drive. I watched from an upstairs window, heart pounding. Hours later, he returned, I couldn't sleep, anxiety gnawing. From the balcony, I saw the SUVs pull up. Men emerged, tense. Down on the street below the gates, shadows moved, rival figures lurking, testing. Vincent stepped out, coat open despite the chill, confronting them directly. Voices rose, low and threatening. A shove, a standoff. His men closed ranks, but Vincent held up a hand, calm authority diffusing the threat. The rivals backed off, retreating into the fog with muttered warnings. He looked up then, as if sensing me. Our eyes met across the distance. Even from afar, the surge hit him again, love crashing like waves, violent and all-consuming. He stood frozen, inner world tearing apart, remorse for exposing her to this, longing to climb the stairs and claim the peace only she stirred in him. I stepped back into the shadows, dizziness overwhelming me. Confusion numbed my thoughts. Why did his gaze make my heart ache so? A poor, powerless woman like me, thin, broken, humiliated by years of unfair blows, eviction notices, empty fridges, nights when Lucas cried from hunger, suddenly seen by a man who commanded cities. It felt like a cruel joke, yet the pull was real, terrifying. The bonding came in small, secret moments. I began leaving things. A folded napkin note thanking him for the books in Lucas's room. A simple drawing my son made of the bridge. They vanished, but fresh flowers appeared on my dresser, or a warm blanket on cold nights. One rainy afternoon, I found him in the library, staring at an old baseball glove on the shelf. Faded leather from a Giants game with Sophia, I later learned. His face was raw with grief. I hesitated in the doorway. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean to intrude." He turned, eyes tormented. "Stay." We sat in silence, rain pattering against windows. He didn't speak of his pain, but I felt it, mirroring my own losses. Curiosity won over fear. "You miss her," I said softly. He nodded, voice breaking. "Every day." The vulnerability undid something in me. Tears fell silently. He reached out, thumb brushing one away, touch electric, burning. Love surged in him, fierce and immediate, clashing with guilt. He pulled back, fists clenched. "You're kind," he said roughly. "Too kind for this house." I shook my head, voice timid. No one's been kind to us in so long. That night, as fog enveloped the mansion, another confrontation erupted. Rivals bolder, blocking the drive. Vincent went out alone at first, words sharp, de-escalating with sheer presence. But tension escalated, a scuffle broke out. His men intervened, resolving it without harm, but the threat lingered. He returned unsettled, finding me waiting in the foyer, anxiety twisting my stomach. Our eyes met, and the air crackled. His inner turmoil peaked, love burning hotter, remorse tearing deeper. "You're safe," he whispered, stepping close, too close. I nodded, numb, heart pounding with fear, curiosity, and a spark I dared not name. In the quiet stillness that followed, something shifted irrevocably. Observation became connection. Suspicion softened toward trust. And in Vincent's tormented heart, love rooted deeper, passionate and unstoppable, promising to upend both our worlds. I didn't know yet how fiercely it would bind us. The days in Vincent's Pacific Heights mansion blurred into weeks, each one layering more confusion over my heart, like the endless fog that clung to San Francisco in late October of the year 2025. I told myself it was temporary, a kind stranger's charity while I searched for work, for a way back to independence. But the truth whispered louder. I had nowhere to go, and the luxury surrounding us highlighted my poverty in ways that humiliated me anew every morning. I would wake before dawn, body aching from memories of hard benches and cold winds that had bitten through my thin coat for months. Even now, nourished by regular meals, I remained thin, bones pressing against skin, strength slow to return after malnutrition had weakened me so deeply. Lucas thrived, his cheeks filling out, his laughter echoing in halls that swallowed sound like secrets. But I carried the weight, the unfairness of eviction for missed rent after my husband's medical bills piled higher than I could climb, the nights I had gone hungry to feed my son, the absurd cruelty of a world that let a child shiver while mansions like this stood empty of hardship. Vincent's wealth displayed itself quietly but relentlessly. Private chefs preparing meals I had only dreamed of, a home gym gleaming with equipment, cars that cost more than most people's homes waiting in the garage. It made me feel smaller, more powerless, a beggar in a king's court. Yet I watched him, closely, guardedly. Vincent suffered in ways his power could not touch. I noticed the pattern, sharp pains behind his eyes, retreats to darkened rooms where he sat motionless, hand pressed to his temple. Migraines, severe and unexplained, that left him pale and silent for hours. Doctors came, elite specialists flown in from across the country, charging fortunes for visits in his private study. They prescribed medications, spoke of stress management, suggested therapy, but nothing helped. The pain returned, fiercer each time. I recognized the signs. My late husband had endured something similar in his final months, a benign cyst pressing on nerves, misdiagnosed for years as mere tension until it was almost too late. The memory twisted in me like a knife. Those doctors with their degrees and fees had dismissed it too, until a simple scan finally revealed the truth. One afternoon, as fog draped the bay in gray, I found Vincent in the sunroom overlooking the garden. He sat hunched, face ashen, fingers digging into his scalp. The room was dimmed, curtains half drawn. My heart clenched, fear for him mixing with curiosity I could not suppress. I hesitated in the doorway, voice soft and timid. "Vincent, are you all right?" He looked up, gray eyes clouded with pain and something deeper, torment that gnawed relentlessly. The love that had struck him that first night burned hotter now, passionate and intense, tearing violently at his heart. Seeing me there, concern despite my own fragility, amplified it. Guilt surged for bringing me into his dangerous world, remorse for the life that caused such suffering, conflict raging because he wanted me closer, needed me, yet feared his darkness would consume us both. "I'm fine," he said roughly, but his voice cracked. I stepped nearer, powerless yet drawn. "It looks bad, like it hurts a lot." He managed a tight nod. Inner war flashed across his features, the urge to pull me into his arms clashing with fear of vulnerability. That evening, another confrontation pulled him away. Rivals, the Sunset Kings, pushed into his territory near the Embarcadero. His phone buzzed incessantly. He left in a rush, coat flung on, men flanking him. From an upstairs window, I watched the SUVs disappear into the fog. Anxiety gripped me, dizziness swaying my balance, as unfair thoughts crowded. Why did his world demand such tension, while mine had crumbled from simple poverty? Hours later, they returned. I waited in the shadows of the foyer, heart pounding. Vincent stepped out, confronting lingering shadows outside the gates, bold rivals testing limits. Voices rose in the mist, tense standoff. His presence alone commanded, diffusing threats with words sharp as steel. No blows landed, but suspense hung thick. He protected his empire, and now, unknowingly, me. He entered, face drawn, pain returning twofold from stress. Our eyes met in the dim light. The surge hit him again, love overwhelming, burning, clashing with remorse that he exposed me to this. "You're up late," he murmured, stepping close. "I couldn't sleep, worried." My voice trembled, polite yet fearful. His hand lifted as if to touch my cheek, then dropped. Torment etched deeper. The concern grew in me nightly. I recalled my husband's suffering, the overlooked cyst, the simple fix delayed by indifferent experts. Vincent's symptoms mirrored it too closely. Asymmetry in pain, triggers from light and sound. Elite doctors missed it, just as they had for us poorer folk. I began praying in earnest, alone in the elegant bedroom with its soft lights and vast bed. Kneeling by the window, Bible open on my lap, tears falling as fog pressed outside. Lord, show me if I'm seeing right. I can't ignore his pain, but I'm nobody. A thin, broken woman who endured cold winds and empty stomachs while he commands worlds. Yet the pull toward him intensified, confusing and disorienting, numbness spreading when his gaze lingered too long. One night, after a particularly brutal migraine left him bedridden, I left a small note outside his door, a folded paper with a Bible verse about healing, and warm tea from the kitchen. It vanished by morning. In its place, on my dresser, a single red rose and a new warm scarf, soft cashmere, worth more than my old coat. The gesture undid me. Tears came in quiet stillness, pity for my past misery clashing with shock at this care from a powerful man. Another confrontation escalated near Fisherman's Wharf, rivals bolder, blocking a delivery. Vincent went personally, standoff stretching into hours. Tension built, words turned heated. His men ready, but he de-escalated with authority alone, rivals retreating with grudging respect. He returned exhausted, pain flaring. Finding me waiting with quiet concern, his inner world tore further, love surging violently, remorse gnawing that his life endangered the woman who stirred hope in him. We sat in the library that night, rain lashing windows, silence thick, condensed emotion hanging. "It never stops," he admitted finally, voice low. "The pain, the everything." I nodded, timid. "I've seen it before, in someone I loved." His eyes searched mine, tormented hope flickering. The concern deepened into conviction. I knew what I saw, but doubt warred. Who was I to challenge experts he paid fortunes? Fear gripped. Interfering could cost this fragile shelter. Yet ignoring it felt wrong. Prayers intensified, heart tearing between gratitude and terror. Outside, fog swirled thicker. Inside, Vincent wrestled demons, love for me burning fiercer, clashing with guilt that he might never deserve the light I brought. And I, poor and powerless, felt the threads tightening, concern growing into something that scared me as much as it drew me. I didn't know yet how it would demand everything. The fog in late October of the year 2025 grew thicker each night, wrapping the Pacific Heights mansion in a damp shroud that muffled every sound and made the world feel smaller, more isolated. Inside those high stone walls, time moved strangely. Days filled with quiet luxury, nights heavy with unspoken longing and growing dread. I had been watching Vincent's suffering deepen. The migraines came more often now, vicious and unrelenting, stealing color from his face and strength from his powerful frame. He would retreat to his darkened bedroom for hours, emerging pale and silent, the storm in his gray eyes fiercer than before. The elite doctors returned, murmuring about chronic stress, prescribing stronger medication that did nothing but dull the edges. I heard their hushed conversations with Mrs. Rossi. Nothing more to be done, accept the condition, manage the symptoms. But I could not accept it. Every time I saw him press his palm to his temple, wincing as light pierced the room, memories of my late husband flooded back. The same overlooked cyst, the same dismissive experts who had let him suffer until it was nearly too late. My heart tore wider each day. Gratitude for the roof over our heads, warring with terror that I might be seeing the same slow tragedy unfold in the man who had saved us. Who was I? A thin, malnourished woman who had spent countless nights shivering in fog-chilled doorways, powerless against eviction and hunger, to question men who charged fortunes for their opinions. Yet the conviction grew, quiet but insistent, like a whisper I could no longer ignore. Vincent felt my gaze more often now. When our eyes met across a room, the surge of love that had struck him that first night on Potrero Hill returned with violent force, passionate, burning, tearing at the walls he had built around his heart since Sophia's death. Guilt and remorse gnawed deeper, for the danger his world brought, for the unfairness that kept me fragile while he commanded everything, for the fierce possessiveness that made him want to shield me from every memory of cold and want. He fought it daily, fists clenched in private, tormented by how deeply this destitute woman and her child had burrowed into his guarded soul. One stormy evening, the tension outside the mansion escalated again. Word had reached Vincent that the Sunset Kings were moving product through his territory near the Presidio. Bold, direct challenge. He left at dusk, coat collar turned up against driving rain, men at his heels. I watched from the balcony, heart pounding, fog swallowing the taillights of the SUVs. From snippets Mrs. Rossi let slip, the confrontation stretched long, rivals refusing to back down, words turning sharp, posturing on slick streets under sodium lamps. Vincent's presence alone usually ended such things, but tonight the standoff dragged. Hours passed. Rain lashed the windows. Lucas slept peacefully in his warm bed, unaware, while I paced the guest suite, anxiety twisting my stomach into knots. When the SUVs finally returned near midnight, I was waiting in the shadowed foyer, wrapped in the cashmere scarf Vincent had left for me. He stepped inside, rain dripping from his dark hair, face drawn with exhaustion and fresh pain. The migraine had struck again during the confrontation, worsened by stress and flashing police lights in the distance. He stopped when he saw me, surprise softening the hard lines of his face for a moment. Water beaded on his expensive coat. The scent of rain and city night clung to him. "You should be asleep," he said quietly, voice rough. "I couldn't," I whispered, timid, polite, yet trembling. I was worried. Something broke open in his expression, love surging violently, clashing with remorse that I now worried for him because of the life he led. He took a step closer, then stopped, as if afraid to come too near. "Go to bed, Emily. I'm fine." But he wasn't. He turned toward the stairs, movement stiff with pain. Halfway up, he paused, hand gripping the banister, body swaying slightly. A low sound escaped him, half groan, half curse. The migraine crested, blinding and brutal. I acted without thinking. "Vincent!" My voice cracked as I ran up the steps. He sank to one knee on the landing, head bowed, breathing ragged. I knelt beside him, small and powerless against his broad frame, yet steady in my fear for him. "Let me help, please." He lifted his head, gray eyes glazed with agony and something rawer, torment at his own weakness in front of me, love burning hotter because of my concern. "I said I'm fine," he ground out, but the words lacked force. The house was quiet, Mrs. Rossi retired, guards outside, Lucas asleep. We were alone in the dim hallway, lit only by a single sconce. Another wave hit him. He pressed both hands to his head, shoulders shaking. My heart tore open completely. Memories of cold nights, empty stomachs, unfair losses, all paled beside this moment of seeing him suffer. I reached out, tentative, touching his arm. "I've seen this before. I know what it might be." He looked at me then, truly looked, pain stripping away every defense. The love in his eyes was fierce, overwhelming, a silent storm that stole my breath. "Trust me," I whispered, voice soft, pleading. "Just this once." Inner conflict raged across his face, pride warring with desperation, remorse that he needed help from the woman he wanted to protect, love demanding he let her near. Slowly, he nodded. I helped him to his bedroom, a vast space of dark wood and muted grays, floor-to-ceiling windows showing rain-streaked views of the fog-bound bay. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed, head in hands. I fetched cool cloths from the ensuite bathroom, dimmed the lights further, spoke softly as I had with my husband in his worst moments. The wealth around us mocked my poverty, even here. Silk sheets worth more than my old apartment's rent, art on the walls I couldn't pronounce, a bedside table with a watch that gleamed like captured starlight. Yet I, thin and once sleep-deprived on park benches, knelt before this powerful man, offering what little I had, knowledge born of hardship. As the pain eased slightly under gentle pressure and quiet words, Vincent's breathing steadied. He lifted his head, eyes locking onto mine in the low light. The surge hit him harder than ever, love passionate and absolute, tearing violently at every remnant of his guarded heart. Guilt and remorse flooded, for dragging her into his world, for needing her when he should be strong for her. "Thank you," he said, voice raw. Tears filled my eyes, shock, confusion, deep disorientation at the reversal. Me, destitute and powerless, comforting the man who owned half the city. In that quiet, condensed stillness, with rain drumming against glass and fog pressing close, the crisis crystallized. I knew what I had to do, and I knew it would cost everything. I didn't know yet how completely it would change us both. The storm that night in late October of the year 2025 raged like something alive, wind howling around the mansion, rain battering the windows as if trying to break inside. Lightning flashed over the bay, illuminating Vincent's bedroom in stark white bursts before plunging it back into shadow. He lay on the bed, shirt unbuttoned, breathing shallow and ragged. The migraine had peaked into something merciless, vision blurred, nausea rolling through him, pain pulsing like a hammer against his skull. I knelt beside him on the silk rug, small and trembling, my thin hands hovering uncertainly. The contrast struck me harder than ever. This powerful man, master of empires and shadows, reduced to agony on Egyptian cotton sheets worth more than every possession I had ever owned, while I, once curled against cold winds on fog-soaked benches, malnourished and powerless, now held the possibility of his relief in my shaking fingers. I had prepared quietly after helping him to the room. From the first aid cabinet in the marble bathroom, I gathered what I needed: cool compresses, a small flashlight, over-the-counter anti-inflammatory pills, and a simple technique I had learned nursing my husband through his final months: gentle pressure to ease swelling, careful guidance to relax tense muscles around the nerves. Vincent watched me through half-closed eyes, gray irises dark with pain and something fiercer. The love that had ignited that first night on the street burned hotter now, passionate and consuming, tearing violently at his heart. Seeing me there, fragile, concerned, risking overstep, amplified every emotion. Guilt crashed over him in waves. Remorse for needing help from the woman he wanted only to protect. Torment that his wealth had bought endless, useless opinions, while her humble knowledge might hold the answer. Inner conflict raged. He, the untouchable boss, laid low before a destitute mother who had endured humiliations he could scarcely imagine. "Emily," he rasped, voice rough, "you don't have to." "I do," I whispered, soft and timid, yet resolute. "Please trust me." He searched my face, lightning flashing again, illuminating the hollows beneath my cheeks, the lingering frailty from months of hunger and cold nights. Something broke further inside him, love surging to a point of near pain, clashing with violent remorse that fate had let her suffer while he lived in excess. Slowly, he nodded. I began carefully, voice low and soothing, guiding him to lie back against pillows that cost more than my old rent. Cool cloth to his forehead, fingers gently massaging temples in slow circles, applying steady pressure at the base of his skull where tension knotted fiercest. I spoke of breathing, of relaxing into the touch, the same words I had once used for my husband when doctors dismissed his pleas. Minutes stretched, rain drummed, thunder rolled distant over the Pacific. Then, something shifted. Vincent's breathing deepened. The rigid lines of pain in his face eased fraction by fraction. His hand, which had gripped the sheet, relaxed. He opened his eyes fully, blinking against the dim light as if seeing clearly for the first time in years. The pressure lifted, not just eased, lifted. Color returned to his cheeks. The glaze of agony cleared from his gray eyes. He sat up slowly, testing, waiting for the inevitable return. But it did not come. Silence filled the room, thick and stunned. Emily. His voice cracked, wonder threading through it. He touched his temple, incredulous. It's gone. Tears filled my eyes instantly. Shock, relief, deep disorientation crashing over me. Dizziness swayed the room. I gripped the bed's edge to steady myself. I, the powerless woman who had begged for scraps, who had watched my son shiver in fog-chilled nights, had just eased the suffering of San Francisco's most feared man. Vincent stared at me, emotions storming across his face. Love exploded fiercer than ever, passionate, absolute, burning away every last defense. It hit him like a physical force, tearing his heart open. Remorse followed instantly. For every cold night I had endured, every unfair blow life had dealt me while his wealth shielded him from want. Guilt that he had needed me, yet gratitude so profound it humbled him. He reached for my hand, enveloping my thin fingers in his warm, strong ones. The touch sent lightning through both of us. You did this, he whispered, voice raw with awe. You. I shook my head, tears spilling. I only remembered what helped before. He pulled me gently closer until I sat on the edge of the bed beside him. Lightning flashed again, illuminating us. Him powerful and healed, me small and trembling from the weight of what had just happened. In that quiet, condensed stillness, broken only by rain, something irreversible occurred. Vincent cupped my cheek with infinite tenderness, thumb brushing away a tear. His eyes held mine, stormy gray, now clear and blazing with emotion he could no longer contain. I don't deserve this, he said hoarsely. I don't deserve you. Confusion and shock numbed me. The room spun. A man who commanded streets and fortunes, looking at me, a woman humiliated by poverty, thin from hunger, marked by unfair loss, as if I were salvation itself. His forehead rested against mine, breath mingling. The love pouring from him was overwhelming, passionate, intense beyond anything I had ever known. It terrified and drew me in equal measure. You saved me, he murmured against my skin, in every way possible. Tears fell faster, my heart tore violently, gratitude clashing with fear, the absurdity of my past misery against this moment of impossible tenderness. Dizziness returned. I swayed, and his arms came around me instantly, steadying, protective. For the first time in years, Vincent Moretti felt whole, not just free of pain, but alive in his heart. The miracle had come not from paid experts or vast wealth, but from the willing hands of a poor, faithful woman who had nothing left to lose. And I, Emily Harper, felt the first true warmth, not just in body but in soul, held gently in the arms of the man whose single decision on a foggy street had pulled us from despair. Outside, the storm began to ease. Inside, something beautiful and terrifying had just begun. I didn't know yet how fiercely it would consume us both. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving only a thin mist drifting over the bay and a strange, fragile quiet inside the mansion. I sat on the edge of Vincent's bed long after the pain had left him, my hands still trembling from what had just happened. The room felt too large, too opulent. The heavy drapes, the gleaming dark furniture, the faint scent of expensive cologne lingering in the air. Everything reminded me how far I was from the world I knew. Cold, fog-soaked nights on benches, thin blankets barely holding back the wind, the constant ache of an empty stomach. Here, in this palace of wealth, I had just performed a small miracle with nothing but memory and gentle touch. Vincent stood at the window now, staring out at the slowly clearing sky. He had not spoken in minutes. His broad shoulders were rigid beneath the open shirt, every muscle tense as if bracing for a blow. The healing was real. I could see it in the steady rise and fall of his chest, the clear focus in his gray eyes. But something darker had taken its place. Love still burned in him, more intense than ever, passionate and all-consuming. It tore at his heart with violent force, clashing against a rising tide of fear and rage. Fear that this fragile woman, who had endured humiliations he could not bear to imagine, had risked everything to help him. Rage at himself for needing her, at the world that had let her suffer while he lived untouched by want, at the vulnerability now exposed in his carefully guarded soul. Remorse gnawed deeper than any migraine ever had. How could he, a man whose decisions shaped the city's shadows, accept salvation from the very person he had pulled from those shadows? He turned suddenly, eyes locking onto mine. The storm inside him broke. "What did you do?" His voice was low, edged with something sharp. Not gratitude, accusation. I flinched, confusion and shock numbing me. Dizziness swayed the room. I gripped the bedpost to stay upright. I only tried to help, like I told you. You touched me. You interfered. He stepped closer, towering, powerful. The man who commanded respect and fear on every street from the Embarcadero to North Beach. Do you have any idea what you've done? My heart pounded. Horror crept in, cold as the winds I once endured. Vincent, please, I saw you in pain. I couldn't just... You are not a doctor. The words cracked like a whip. You are a guest in my house, a stranger I took off the street. Each syllable struck deeper, tearing at the fragile hope that had begun to root in my chest. Tears stung my eyes. I, who had been powerless against eviction, against hunger that left my son crying quietly so I wouldn't hear. I now stood accused by the one man who had shown kindness. I thought it helped, I whispered, voice soft, timid, breaking. I'm sorry. Sorry. The word tasted like ash. Sorry for trying to ease suffering. Sorry for being poor and desperate and daring to care. Vincent's face twisted, inner conflict raging visibly. Love surged against the fear, passionate and desperate, but fear won in that moment. Fear of weakness exposed. Fear that word of this, of him collapsing, of a homeless woman easing what experts could not, would spread through his world and undermine everything he had built. He turned away, hand raking through his dark hair. "Guards," he said into the quiet, voice flat and absolute. The door opened almost instantly. 2 men in dark suits entered, faces impassive. My breath stopped. Escort Miss Harper and her son from the premises. Now. The command landed like a physical blow. Shock rippled through me, deep and disorienting. The room tilted. Numbness spread from my chest outward. This couldn't be real. Minutes ago, he had held my hand in wonder. Now. No, I breathed, horror rising. Vincent, please. Lucas is asleep. We have nowhere. That is no longer my concern. His back remained to me, shoulders rigid, but I saw his hand clench at his side, knuckles white. The lie cost him. Torment flashed across his profile before he schooled it. The guards moved forward. One reached for my arm, gentle but firm. I pulled away instinctively, tears spilling now. Please, I begged, voice breaking completely. After everything, you can't just throw us back onto the street. It's cold. Lucas. Vincent flinched at my son's name, but did not turn. Love tore at him violently, remorse flooding in waves hot enough to choke. Every instinct screamed to stop this, to pull me close and beg forgiveness. But fear, of appearing weak, of rivals sensing vulnerability, held him frozen. Take her things, he ordered, voice rougher now. Put them in the car, drive them, wherever she wants. The guards nodded. One disappeared to wake Lucas and gather our meager belongings, the worn backpack, the plastic bag that held our entire life. I stood frozen as they led me from the room, legs numb, world blurring through tears. The hallway that had once felt like refuge now stretched endless and cold. Mrs. Rossi appeared at the top of the stairs, face pale with shock, but she said nothing, only pressed a small bundle of food into my hands as we passed. Lucas, drowsy and confused, clung to me in the foyer. Mama, where are we going? I could not answer. Sobs choked me. Vincent remained upstairs, out of sight, but I felt his torment even from a distance, the violent tearing of his heart as love battled fear and won nothing. The front door opened onto morning mist. A black SUV waited, engine running. The guards helped us in, polite, detached. The door closed with finality. As we pulled down the long drive, past gates that swung open like a dismissal, I looked back once. Vincent stood at an upper window, silhouetted against the light. Even from afar, I saw the anguish twisting his face. Hands pressed to the glass, body rigid with the cost of what he had just done. Love still burned in him, fiercer than ever, passionate and desperate. But in that moment, fear had spoken louder. The car merged onto the street. San Francisco spread before us, beautiful, indifferent, unforgiving to the poor. My thin coat offered little against the returning chill. Lucas huddled against me, quiet tears on his cheeks. We were back where we began, or so it seemed. I didn't know yet that this cruel separation was only the beginning of the storm, and that Vincent's heart, torn violently open, would not let him rest until he made it right. The hospital in downtown San Francisco gleamed under cold fluorescent lights, a world of crisp white coats and quiet urgency that felt galaxies away from the foggy streets Lucas and I had known too well. I sat in a small waiting area on the neurology floor, clutching my son's hand, my thin coat pulled tight against the sterile chill. The guards had driven us here after Vincent's command, his final act of conflicted mercy, insisting on tests to confirm what I had done. Lucas dozed against my shoulder, exhausted from the abrupt upheaval, while I stared at the floor tiles, tears drying on my cheeks. My heart felt torn in pieces. Shock and confusion numbed everything, dizziness lingering from the sudden expulsion, horror at how quickly safety had turned to rejection. One moment held in tenderness, the next cast out like an intruder. The unfairness burned. I, who had endured cold winds whipping through threadbare blankets on park benches, who had rationed every scrap of food until hunger became a constant companion, had only tried to ease his pain. And for that, banished back to the nothing I knew so well. Yet beneath the hurt, a quiet ache persisted. The memory of his eyes when the pain lifted, the warmth of his hand on mine. I pushed it away, guarded and fearful. Men like Vincent Moretti did not truly care for women like me. Inside the examination room, Vincent underwent scans, state-of-the-art machines humming in rooms that cost more per hour than I had earned in months of odd jobs. Doctors swarmed, murmuring in hushed tones, reviewing images on glowing screens. He sat on the edge of the bed, shirt open for monitors, face impassive. But inside, torment raged. The love that had surged from the first moment on that foggy street now burned with violent intensity, tearing his heart wider with every passing minute. Remorse flooded him in relentless waves, guilt for casting her out, for letting fear override the miracle she had given him. Every second away from her felt like punishment. He had sent her back to the cold, the hunger, the unfair world that had already taken too much from her frail frame. The image of her thin face, streaked with tears, haunted him. Passionate longing clashed against self-loathing. How could he claim to protect her and then hurt her so cruelly? A senior neurologist entered finally, folder in hand, expression grave. "Mr. Moretti, we have the results." Vincent steeled himself. "Tell me." The doctor laid scans side by side, current images beside older ones pulled from his extensive medical history. He pointed to a shadowed area. There, a benign cyst pressing on nerves in the temporal region. Small, but positioned to cause exactly the symptoms you've described. It's been there for years. Vincent's blood turned to ice. Years? The doctor nodded slowly. Noted in a scan 3 years ago. The report recommended monitoring and possible intervention if symptoms worsened, but he hesitated. There's no record of follow-up. Your previous specialists appear to have continued conservative management. Conservative management. The words hit Vincent like a fist. They had known. All those elite doctors, flown in on private jets, paid fortunes for consultations in his marble-walled study, had seen the cyst and chosen to do nothing. Ongoing visits meant ongoing fees. His desperation, his wealth, had been profitable. They had kept him suffering because curing him would end the income. Rage surged, hot and violent, clashing against the love and remorse already tearing him apart. His hands clenched on the bed rail. All those years of pain, of retreating to darkened rooms while his empire grew, deliberately prolonged. And the one person who had seen clearly, who had acted with nothing but gentle hands and faithful heart, was the woman he had just thrown out into the fog. The doctor continued carefully. "It's treatable, minor procedure. You could have been free of this long ago." Vincent stood abruptly, the monitors tugging at his arm. Inner conflict reached a breaking point, love for Emily overwhelming every other emotion, passionate and absolute, demanding he fix what he had broken. "Where is she?" he demanded of the guard outside the door. "Waiting area, sir, as you instructed." He strode down the corridor, hospital gown flapping beneath his open coat, ignoring startled looks. The love propelled him, burning away fear of weakness. Remorse gnawed deeper with every step, for the cold he had sentenced her to again, for the unfairness that a woman who had endured such poverty should suffer more because of him. I looked up as he approached, shock rippling through me. Vincent, tall, commanding even in hospital attire, stopped before us, gray eyes raw with emotion I could not name. "Emily." His voice cracked on my name. Lucas stirred, blinking up at the man who had sheltered us and then cast us out. I pulled my son closer, guarded, fearful. "What is it?" He knelt. Vincent Moretti, the most powerful man in San Francisco, knelt on the sterile floor before a destitute woman and her child. They knew, he said hoarsely. The doctors, years ago. They saw the cyst and did nothing. Kept me coming back for the money. Horror flooded me anew, mingled with vindication and sorrow. Tears welled again, all his suffering, deliberate. I was a fool, he continued, voice breaking, trusted titles and fees, and you saw what they missed. His hand reached for mine, trembling. Love poured from his eyes, passionate, intense, no longer hidden. It stole my breath, dizziness returning as the world tilted once more. I hurt you, he whispered, cast you out when you gave me everything. I was afraid of needing you, afraid of what it meant. But I can't. His voice failed. I can't let you go back to that life, not ever again. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Confusion and shock numbed me, yet warmth spread where his fingers touched mine. The unfairness of my past, the cold nights, the hunger, the humiliation, clashed against this moment of impossible redemption. Forgive me, he pleaded, forehead resting against my knee like a penitent. Please. Lucas watched, wide-eyed. I looked down at the man whose wealth could buy cities, now humbled before me. My heart tore violently, fear warring with the pull I had felt from the beginning. In the quiet hum of the hospital corridor, with monitors beeping distantly and fog pressing against windows, revelation settled. The miracle had not been just his healing. It was this, love breaking through pride and fear, drawing a powerful man to his knees before the woman he had rescued, and now needed more than breath itself. I didn't know yet how much deeper it would bind us, but in that moment, something shifted irrevocably, and the storm inside both our hearts began, slowly, to calm. The hospital corridor felt suspended in time, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic and the distant hum of machines. Vincent remained on his knees before me, his strong hands gently holding mine, gray eyes lifted in raw supplication. Lucas watched quietly from my side, small fingers curled into my coat. I could barely breathe. Shock and confusion still numbed me, yet the warmth of Vincent's touch began to melt the ice that had formed around my heart when he cast us out. I found my voice at last, soft and trembling. I forgive you. The words seemed to break something open in him. A shudder ran through his broad frame. Love, passionate, burning, absolute, poured from his eyes, tearing violently at every remaining wall. Remorse flooded deeper, guilt for the cold he had briefly returned me to, for the unfairness of my past that his actions had echoed. He pressed his lips to my knuckles, a gesture so tender it brought fresh tears to my eyes. We returned to the mansion together, the same black SUV carrying us back through fog-draped streets. Vincent sat close, arm protectively around my shoulders, as if afraid I might vanish. His inner world remained in turmoil, love clashing against fear that he did not deserve this second chance, remorse gnawing that his momentary weakness had caused me more pain. The great iron gates opened, and the house welcomed us with warm lights glowing against the mist. Mrs. Rossi met us at the door, relief plain on her face. Lucas ran to his room, exhausted but safe. Vincent led me to the sunroom overlooking the bay, where late afternoon light filtered through glass. He could not stop touching me, fingers tracing my cheek, my thin wrist, as if memorizing that I was real. I had a routine security check run on all household staff, he said quietly, voice rough with fresh emotion. Standard procedure, DNA for background. I nodded, guarded curiosity stirring, and he pulled a folder from the side table, hands unsteady. Emily, there's something you need to know. My heart stuttered, anxiety crept in, dizziness threatening again. He opened the folder, revealing printed reports. When I met Sophia, my late wife, she was already pregnant from a brief relationship in college. She gave the baby up for adoption privately, quietly. She never told me the full story, said it was too painful. I respected that, never pushed. The room began to spin. I gripped the arm of the chair. Vincent's eyes filled with wonder and torment. The DNA results came back, but not the way you think. The words struck like thunder in still air. Shock crashed over me, deep, disorienting, numbing every sense. My vision blurred, the bay beyond the windows tilted. I, the destitute woman who had endured cold winds and empty nights, who had buried a husband and fought alone for my son, was the secret daughter of Vincent Moretti's beloved wife. Horror mingled with impossible joy. Tears streamed unchecked. "No, it can't." "It is," he whispered, voice breaking. "Sophia had a child before she ever met me." Emily froze. "A daughter she gave up quietly, years before our marriage. I never knew her name, never knew where she was." He handed her the file, fingers trembling. "You're not my daughter, Emily." His eyes locked onto hers, heavy with emotion. "You are Sophia's child, from before me. Her past, the part she never had the courage to face again." He reached for me again, but I pulled back instinctively, confusion tearing my heart violently apart. All the unfairness of my life, eviction, hunger, the humiliating struggle while others lived in palaces, now revealed as tied to this man by hidden threads of family. Vincent's own heart tore wider. Love for me, already passionate and consuming, deepened into something sacred, protective, almost reverent. Yet betrayal stung. Sophia had kept this from him. Remorse flooded anew, for the years I had suffered unknown, for the poverty that need never have touched his wife's child. Guilt that his world of shadows had indirectly shaped my hardship. "I would have found you," he said hoarsely. "If I'd known, I would have moved heaven and earth." I wept then, sobs wrenched from the deepest place. The little girl given up, the woman left to struggle alone, the mother who had carried secret grief, all colliding in this moment of revelation. Vincent drew me gently into his arms, cradling me as the storm broke fully. Love poured from him, fierce, possessive, tender beyond words. The romantic surge that had ignited on a foggy street now burned with familial depth, complicated and overwhelming. We sat in quiet, condensed stillness as evening fog rolled thicker against the glass. His hand stroked my hair, my thin shoulders, as if comforting the child Sophia had lost and the woman he had found. Later, when emotion ebbed enough for words, he spoke again. "You are home now, truly home. Everything I have, it's yours, Lucas's. No more cold, no more want." I looked up at him, eyes swollen, heart raw. The man who commanded San Francisco's hidden empires now gazed at me with devotion that humbled him. The second twist settled between us, blood tying what love had already bound. Outside, rivals still tested boundaries in the city below, but inside these walls, a new family began to heal. I didn't know yet how the final revelation would ignite everything into passion beyond imagining. But in that moment, held safely for the first time in my life, I felt the first true peace. And Vincent, holding the daughter he never knew he had, felt his shattered heart begin to mend. Night had fallen fully over Pacific Heights, the fog so thick it pressed against the windows like a living thing. Inside the sunroom, Vincent and I sat close on the wide sofa, the revelation of blood still hanging between us, shocking, sacred, impossible. Lucas slept upstairs, safe in the room that now felt truly his. My tears had slowed, but my heart remained torn wide open. Confusion, joy, lingering fear all swirling together. The thin, malnourished woman who had endured countless cold winds and empty nights now sat wrapped in a cashmere throw worth more than any coat I had ever owned, held gently by the man whose late wife had given me life. Vincent's arms stayed around me, strong and careful, as if I might break. His gray eyes never left my face. The love that had struck him that first foggy evening had deepened beyond measure, passionate, protective, reverent because of the blood tie, yet burning with something new and dangerous. Inner torment raged fiercer than ever. Remorse for the years I had suffered unknown. Guilt that his dangerous life had indirectly shaped my hardship. Violent conflict because the longing surging through him now felt forbidden, overwhelming. He drew back slightly, hands framing my face. "Emily," he whispered, voice rough with emotion, "you are Sophia's daughter, my family. But what I feel—" He stopped, jaw tight, eyes blazing. "It's more, so much more." My breath caught. Shock rippled through me again, dizziness threatening as the room tilted. The air between us crackled, charged with everything unspoken. "I have loved you from the first moment I saw you on that street," he confessed, words tumbling out like a dam breaking. "Not as a father, not as duty, as a man loves a woman, fiercely, completely. It terrified me then. It terrifies me now, but I can't fight it anymore." The confession struck like lightning. Horror and wonder flooded me. This powerful man, whose wealth shielded him from every want, whose word commanded the city's shadows, loved me. Me, the destitute mother who had begged for shelter, thin from hunger, humiliated by life's unfair blows. Tears spilled anew. "Vincent, I'm nobody. I have nothing. You are everything," he said fiercely, thumb brushing my tears. "You saved me. You are Sophia's legacy, and you are the woman who has brought me back to life." His forehead rested against mine. Breath mingled. The space between us vanished. Then he kissed me. Not gentle, not tentative. The kiss was passionate, desperate, explosive. 10 years of buried grief and newfound hope pouring out. His lips claimed mine with a hunger that stole my breath, hands sliding into my hair, pulling me closer as if he could never get close enough. Love surged from him in waves so intense it overwhelmed every doubt, every fear. I froze for a heartbeat. Shock, confusion, the dizzying numbness of a woman who had known only survival, suddenly tasting life. Then something inside me shattered open. I kissed him back, timid at first, then with rising need born of years alone, years cold and hungry and powerless. My thin fingers clutched his shirt, feeling the strong beat of his heart beneath. The world narrowed to this, to heat and tenderness, to the taste of salt from shared tears, to the low sound he made deep in his throat when I pressed closer. We broke apart only for air, foreheads still touching, breathing ragged. "I shouldn't," he rasped, torment flashing across his face. "You're family now, Sophia's blood. But God help me, Emily, I love you. I want you. All of you." Inner conflict tore at him visibly, love clashing violently against propriety, against the ghost of his wife, against fear of tainting me with his darkness. Yet the passion won, burning brighter. I trembled in his arms, heart pounding with terror and longing. The unfairness of my past, the nights curled against wind, the hunger that left me faint, the humiliation of begging for odd jobs, made this moment feel like a dream too beautiful to trust. But his eyes held only truth. "I feel it too," I whispered, voice soft, breaking. "I have since that first night. I was afraid to name it." Relief and desire flared in his gaze. He kissed me again, deeper, slower, exploring, claiming. Hands roamed gently over my back, my waist, careful of my fragility yet possessive in their hold. Heat built, intense and consuming, until we were both shaking. He pulled back just enough to look at me, eyes dark with emotion. I will spend every day making up for the years you suffered. Every cold night, every empty moment, I will fill them with warmth, with safety, with love. Tears fell silently as I nodded, overwhelmed. The contrast struck me anew, his vast wealth, his power, against my past of nothing. Yet here, in his arms, I felt cherished beyond measure. We moved to his bedroom, vast and shadowed, city lights muted through fogged glass. Clothes fell away slowly, reverently. He worshipped every inch of me, kissing the sharp edges of ribs still visible from malnutrition, tracing faint stretch marks from carrying Lucas, murmuring words of adoration that healed wounds deeper than skin. When we came together, it was explosive, passionate, intense, a union of bodies and souls that had both known too much loss. He was tender yet fierce, holding me as if I were precious beyond price, moving with a rhythm that spoke of long-buried need. I clung to him, tears mixing with gasps, the poor woman who had endured so much, finally claimed, protected, loved without reserve. Afterward, we lay tangled in silk sheets, his arms wrapped securely around me, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. Quiet, condensed stillness enveloped us, broken only by distant foghorns over the bay. Vincent's fingers traced lazy patterns on my skin. "You are mine now," he murmured, voice husky with possession and wonder. "And I am yours, forever." I pressed closer, heart full to bursting. The third twist had ignited everything, blood-tied, deepening romantic love into something eternal, passionate, unbreakable. Outside, rivals still prowled the city, but in this bed, in this moment, only we existed. I didn't know yet how completely this love would reshape our lives, but wrapped in his warmth, safe for the first time, I finally believed in miracles. The weeks that followed the night of revelation blurred into a dream I never dared imagine. October of the year 2025 gave way to softer days, the fog lifting at times to reveal brilliant blue over the bay. Vincent's mansion, once a place of quiet luxury and hidden pain, became a home alive with laughter, warmth, and the sound of small feet running across marble floors. Vincent moved swiftly to right every wrong he could reach. My old medical bills vanished overnight, paid in full. Lucas received the best pediatric care, clothes that fit perfectly, toys and books that made his eyes shine. New schools were discussed, private, safe, filled with opportunity. My thin frame began to fill out under the care of chefs who prepared meals I once only dreamed of. Sleep came deeply now, wrapped in sheets that smelled of lavender and safety. The memory of cold winds whipping through threadbare blankets, of nights when hunger kept me awake beside my shivering son, faded like a nightmare in morning light. Yet the past still visited in quiet moments. I would stand on the balcony overlooking the city and feel tears rise. Tears for the unfairness I had endured, for the years of desperate powerlessness while others lived untouched by want. Vincent would find me there, arms sliding around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. "Never again," he would murmur, voice thick with lingering remorse. "I swear it." His love burned brighter each day, passionate, possessive, tender beyond words. It showed in small things, the way he carried Lucas on his shoulders through the garden, the fierce protectiveness in his eyes when rivals tested boundaries in the city below. The nights he held me as if I were the only anchor in his stormy world. Inner torment still flickered, guilt that his dangerous life had delayed this happiness, remorse for the suffering I had known as Sophia's hidden daughter. But love won, every time. Rivals did not vanish. The Sunset Kings grew bolder, sensing change in Vincent's focus. One evening near the end of October, tension erupted again near North Beach. Vincent left with his men, coat open despite the chill, face set in calm authority. I watched from the window, heart pounding, until the SUVs returned hours later. The confrontation had been tense, words sharp under streetlights, posturing that nearly tipped into chaos. But Vincent's presence alone turned them back, no blows needed. He entered the house quietly, finding me waiting. He pulled me close without a word, burying his face in my hair. "It's handled," he whispered. Love surged in him anew, fiercer for the danger he shielded me from, passionate in gratitude that I waited for him. We married quietly on a crisp afternoon, vows exchanged in the sunroom with only Mrs. Rossi, Lucas, and a trusted officiant present. I wore a simple white dress that skimmed my now healthier curves. Vincent in a dark suit, eyes never leaving mine. Lucas stood between us, small hand in each of ours, grinning as we became a family in truth. Vincent stepped back from day-to-day shadows, handing operations to loyal lieutenants while keeping legitimate businesses, construction, restaurants along the Embarcadero, that glittered in the light. He poured energy into foundations instead, shelters for women and children, programs that offered warmth, food, medical care. "So no one else endures what you did," he told me one night, voice rough with emotion. Our love grew fiercer, arguments that shook walls over small fears, reconciliations that burned hotter, bodies and hearts entwined in passionate certainty. He traced my stretch marks with reverence, kissed the places hunger had hollowed, whispered that I was beautiful, strong, his miracle. I, who had once felt only powerless shame, now felt cherished beyond measure. Life lessons settled gently into our days. Vincent taught Lucas, and me, that true strength lay not in power or wealth, but in compassion. That knowledge of another's pain could heal deeper than any medicine. That education of the heart mattered more than any degree. We spoke often of how knowledge guides us, how lessons shape us, how education opens doors poverty tries to slam shut. Knowledge of suffering breeds empathy. Lessons learned in hardship build resilience. Education, formal or lived, lifts generations. Love, we learned together, transcended every barrier. Wealth and poverty could not separate true compassion. Skin color, background, past mistakes, none could dim a heart willing to see another's worth. One evening, as fog rolled golden in sunset light, we stood on the balcony, Vincent's arms around me, Lucas playing nearby with a new puppy. Peace settled deep, a quiet I had never known. Vincent pressed a kiss to my temple. "You saved me, Emily, in every way that matters." I leaned into him, heart full, "And you gave me a life I never dared dream." The miracle had come not through money or power, but through willing hearts, mine offered in humble care, his opened by relentless love. Knowledge changes everything. Lessons from pain teach empathy. Education of the soul builds bridges. Knowledge guides choices. Lessons shape character. Education lifts the fallen. To everyone watching this story on Alex Truths, may knowledge light your path. May lessons strengthen your spirit. May education open every door. I wish you good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the channel Alex Truths, like this video, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Tell me in the comments, how did this story make you feel? Does it connect to something in your own real life? Share your heart. I read every comment and listen to the emotions deep within. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.